Every morning, I sat at the kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over St. Louis. The gateway arch stood tall against the horizon, a reminder of dreams and aspirations that felt increasingly distant. My husband, Mark, often left for work before I even finished my first sip. He was consumed by his job at the marketing firm, and while I admired his dedication, it left me feeling adrift in a sea of loneliness. The days stretched into weeks as I filled my time with mundane chores and occasional visits to local cafes. I would sit in a cozy corner of Café Ventana, sipping on their rich mocha while observing other patrons engage in lively conversations. Their laughter echoed around me, contrasting sharply with the silence that enveloped my home. Mark was a good man, but our marriage had grown stale. He was often preoccupied with deadlines and meetings, leaving little room for intimacy or connection between us. I longed for something more, someone to share my thoughts and dreams with. That yearning began to take an unexpected turn when Jake entered the picture. Jake was 18 and full of youthful exuberance. As my stepson, he had always been respectful and kind, but lately, there was an unspoken tension between us that neither of us could ignore. It started with fleeting glances during family dinners and subtle brushes of our hands while passing dishes. Each moment made my heart race unexpectedly. One afternoon while cleaning Jake's room, something I rarely did, I stumbled upon a hidden note tucked beneath his bed. Curiosity piqued, I pulled it out and unfolded it carefully. The words were scrawled hastily but carried weight, "You are my only truth." My breath caught in my throat as I reread those lines repeatedly. Who was he writing to? What did this mean for us? I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me, confusion, excitement, guilt. Was it wrong to feel flattered? To wonder if those words were meant for me? Questions raced through my mind as I returned the note to its hiding place. Later that evening, Mark came home late from work again, his tie loosened and his brow furrowed from stress. We exchanged pleasantries over dinner. He spoke about an upcoming promotion that would require more hours away from home. As he talked about his ambitions, I couldn't help but feel a pang of resentment mixed with longing for connection that seemed forever out of reach. After dinner, as Mark retreated to his office to catch up on emails, Jake wandered into the living room where I sat alone on the couch. He plopped down beside me without saying a word at first. We both stared at the flickering television screen as if it held answers we desperately sought. "Can you believe summer is almost over?" Jake finally said quietly. I nodded absently. Summer had flown by without much fanfare in our household. "I miss hanging out like we used to," he added after a pause. Those words struck a chord deep within me, a reminder of simpler times when laughter filled our home instead of silence. "Me too," I admitted softly. Just then, our eyes met briefly before we both looked away awkwardly. The air between us crackled with unspoken tension that neither dared to acknowledge aloud. Days passed slowly after that night as I wrestled with conflicting feelings about Jake and my marriage to Mark. Each time Jake entered the room or brushed past me in the hallway, my heart raced uncontrollably, a mix of fear and desire that left me bewildered. Family gatherings became increasingly challenging as well. They forced interactions between Mark and Jake where underlying tension simmered just below the surface. At one such gathering at a local park during the annual St. Louis Art Fair, surrounded by vibrant colors and laughter echoing through the air, everything felt surreal yet strained. Mark chatted animatedly with friends while Jake lingered nearby under an oak tree, a safe distance away yet close enough for me to sense his presence like an electric current running through my veins. As dusk approached and lanterns began to twinkle overhead like stars awakening from slumber, something shifted within me during a moment alone with Jake in the garden behind our house, a secluded area filled with blooming flowers swaying gently in the evening breeze. "Can we talk?" he asked suddenly as we stood amidst shadows cast by fading light. I nodded hesitantly, words caught in my throat as anticipation hung heavily between us like thick fog enveloping everything around us. "I found something," he said quietly before pulling out another note from his pocket, one written hastily yet filled with raw emotion. "You make me feel alive." My heart raced wildly at those words. They echoed deep within me like music long forgotten yet familiar all at once. "Jake," I started but faltered under the weight of what this could mean for both of us, my heart torn between loyalty to Mark and undeniable attraction towards someone who should be off limits entirely. Before I could finish my thought or voice any concerns about what lay ahead, about consequences waiting just outside our fragile bubble, the sound of footsteps approaching broke our momentary connection like glass shattering against concrete. Mark emerged from around the corner unexpectedly just then. Confusion flashed across his face as he spotted us standing too close together beneath blooming petals kissed by twilight's glow. A scene so innocent yet fraught with implications far beyond mere friendship or familial bonds. "What's going on here?" he asked cautiously, but there was an edge beneath his tone that hinted at deeper suspicions lurking beneath surface-level concern. I glanced at Jake, who looked equally startled but determined not to back down now that we'd crossed this line together. The line between what society deemed acceptable versus what felt undeniably real despite everything else pulling us apart like gravity itself, drawing two opposing forces closer still against all odds stacked against them both. The tension in the air was palpable as Mark stood before us, his brow furrowed in confusion. I could sense Jake's uncertainty beside me, our shared secret hanging like a fragile thread between us. I had to think quickly, to navigate this moment without revealing the truth that could unravel everything. "Nothing's going on," I replied, my voice steady but lacking conviction. The words felt foreign on my tongue, a feeble attempt to mask the chaos brewing within me. Mark's gaze lingered on Jake for a moment too long, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. He was searching for answers that neither of us could provide. "Are you sure?" Mark pressed, his tone sharper now. "You two seem awfully close lately." Jake shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved deep into his pockets as he avoided eye contact. I wanted to reach out to him, to reassure him that we were in this together. But what was this? A bond forged in secrecy and guilt? Or something more profound that we dared not name? Before I could respond further, Mark continued, "I just got news about a promotion at work. It'll mean more hours away from home." The mention of his job hit me like a cold wave. The thought of him being gone more often filled me with dread and guilt, a reminder of how lonely our life had become. "Congratulations," I managed to say, forcing a smile even as my heart sank. The promotion meant more distance between us, a widening gap that left room for unspeakable thoughts and desires to fester. As the evening progressed into dinner, the atmosphere remained strained. We sat around the table, Mark regaling us with stories from work while Jake and I exchanged fleeting glances filled with unspoken words. Each laugh from Mark felt like a dagger to my conscience, every bite of food tasted bland against the backdrop of our hidden connection. After dinner, I excused myself under the pretense of cleaning up while Jake slipped outside into the garden. The moonlight cast shadows across the flowers as I joined him moments later, drawn by an invisible force that pulled me closer to him. "What are we doing?" he asked softly as if afraid to break the spell between us. "I don't know," I replied honestly, my heart racing at the proximity between us. "But it feels real." Jake stepped closer, and in that moment of vulnerability, everything else faded away, the house, the dinner table filled with empty plates, and even Mark's impending absence. We kissed then, a gentle brush of lips that ignited something deep within me. It was reckless yet exhilarating, a brief escape from reality that left me breathless. But just as quickly as it began, fear crept back in, fear of being caught and fear of what this all meant for both of us. "We can't keep doing this," I whispered against his lips. "Why not?" he challenged softly but firmly, eyes searching mine for answers only I could provide. I pulled away slightly but couldn't resist lingering close enough to feel his warmth radiating against my skin. Because it's wrong, I murmured. But is it really? He pressed gently. What if it's just what we need? The weight of those words hung heavy in the air between us, an invitation laced with danger and desire that threatened everything I held dear. As we stood there under the stars surrounded by blooming flowers whispering secrets from long ago, reality crashed back into focus when Mark called out for me from inside, the sound slicing through our moment like glass shattering against concrete. I'll be right there. I shouted back before turning once more toward Jake, who looked torn between hope and despair. The evening ended too soon. Mark returned home later than expected after celebrating with colleagues over drinks while Jake disappeared into his room without another word exchanged between us, our kiss lingering like an unspoken promise left hanging in the air. Days turned into weeks filled with family gatherings where laughter echoed through our home but never reached my heart fully again, not since that night in the garden where everything changed forever without any warning or preparation on my part. Mark's promotion meant longer hours at work. He became increasingly absorbed in projects demanding attention far beyond what our family needed at home. He didn't notice how often Jake and I found ourselves stealing moments together, brief exchanges filled with longing looks and touches that ignited sparks beneath layers of guilt festering inside me. Every interaction felt like walking on eggshells. One misstep could lead to catastrophe, unraveling all we'd built together over years spent trying to create a family amidst complexities neither man nor boy understood fully yet somehow drew them closer than ever before despite their differences, their lives entwined by circumstance rather than choice alone. One afternoon while sorting through old belongings tucked away in dusty boxes hidden beneath beds and forgotten corners throughout our house, I stumbled upon love letters Mark had written years ago during courtship days when passion flowed freely without restraints holding them back from expressing feelings openly without fear or hesitation, clouding judgments made then unlike now when every word seemed weighed down by consequences looming large overhead, threatening destruction if revealed prematurely before readiness arrived, unexpectedly uninvited at doorsteps previously thought safe spaces where secrets thrived quietly until now. The letters were beautiful yet haunting reminders of simpler times when love felt pure rather than tainted by complications arising unexpectedly along paths chosen unwittingly leading toward dark corners where shadows danced freely beneath bright lights, illuminating truths buried deep beneath surface-level appearances crafted carefully over time, masking deeper struggles faced daily by those involved, striving endlessly, seeking fulfillment amidst chaos swirling around them, relentlessly pushing boundaries tested beyond limits established long ago without knowing consequences awaited just beyond horizon lines, blurring clarity sought desperately. With each letter read aloud silently within confines created solely for myself alone, I questioned everything. What if these feelings toward Jake weren't merely infatuation? What if they were something much deeper, waiting patiently for acknowledgement long denied due largely because society dictated norms, shaping expectations placed unfairly upon shoulders burdened heavily already? These thoughts plagued me late into nights spent tossing restlessly upon sheets tangled around limbs intertwined, hopelessly lost amidst dreams-filled visions dancing dangerously close yet always outreach just beyond grasp, leaving aching voids behind, reminding constantly. Choices made mattered greatly, impacting lives entwined together forevermore. In moments stolen away during summer festivals, bustling streets alive with laughter echoing joyfully against backdrop, vibrant colors painting scenes reminiscent childhood memories shared fondly amongst friends gathered near, celebrating life itself. I couldn't shake feeling trapped, unable escape confines created willingly despite knowing dangers lurking nearby, waiting pounce upon unsuspecting hearts, unaware danger loomed ever closer, threatening unravel bonds forged carefully over time, risking everything built thus far. As summer progressed toward autumn, leaves began falling, signaling change approaching swiftly, catching everyone off guard, including myself, standing precariously balancing atop precipice. Uncertain future lay ahead, uncertain choices awaited, making decisions weighing heavily, hearts burdened endlessly, wondering whether paths chosen would lead happiness, fulfillment, instead despair, regret haunting memories left behind forevermore. The summer festival buzzed with excitement, the air thick with the smell of fried dough and popcorn. Children darted between booths, their laughter a sweet melody that contrasted sharply with the turmoil swirling within me. I stood beside Mark, pretending to enjoy the festivities, but my mind was elsewhere, lost in thoughts of Jake. As we wandered through the crowd, I caught glimpses of his bright smile amidst the throng. He was with friends, but every so often, his eyes would drift toward me. Each glance sent a jolt through my heart, igniting a fire I had tried so hard to extinguish. The guilt gnawed at me like a persistent ache. The secret we shared felt both intoxicating and dangerous. "Look at that," Mark said, pointing toward a booth filled with colorful trinkets. "You should get something for Jake." I forced a smile, nodding as if his suggestion didn't send a shiver down my spine. "Sure," I replied lightly, but my mind raced. The thought of buying something for Jake felt like stepping deeper into an abyss I couldn't escape. Later, as dusk settled over the festival and lights twinkled like stars above us, Mark excused himself to grab us drinks. I took the opportunity to slip away from the crowd and found myself wandering toward the garden area adjacent to the park. The scent of blooming flowers enveloped me as I stepped into a secluded corner where shadows danced under the moonlight. I leaned against a wooden fence, trying to steady my breath when suddenly Jake appeared before me. He looked as handsome as ever in his casual attire, his tousled hair catching the soft glow of lanterns nearby. "Hey," he said softly, taking a step closer. "Hey," I replied, heart racing at his proximity. The world around us faded into silence as we stood there looking at each other. The weight of unspoken words hung heavily in the air between us until he broke it with a hesitant question. "Are you okay?" "Just thinking," I murmured, avoiding his gaze. He reached out and brushed my arm lightly with his fingers, a simple gesture that sent electric sparks through me. "About us?" he asked cautiously. I opened my mouth to deny it but found no words came forth. Instead, I nodded slowly, feeling trapped in this moment where everything felt both right and wrong all at once. "I can't stop thinking about you," he confessed quietly. Before I could respond or even process what he had just said, he moved closer still until our bodies were inches apart. In that instant of hesitation stretched between us like an eternity filled with yearning and fear, a decision loomed large before us. And then it happened, our lips met in that fleeting moment where time stood still around us. The kiss was soft yet charged with years of pent-up emotion hidden beneath layers of denial and guilt. It felt like coming home after being lost for too long. It ignited something deep within me that had lain dormant for years. But reality hit hard when we pulled apart abruptly. Shame washed over me like ice-cold water dousing flames raging inside my heart. "What are we doing?" I whispered urgently. "I don't know," he admitted breathlessly but didn't step back. Instead, he held my gaze steady as if daring me to look away from this truth we'd both uncovered together. Panic set in when voices from behind broke our bubble, Mark returning with drinks in hand just moments too late to witness our momentary lapse into forbidden territory. My heart raced as I stepped back instinctively while Jake did the same. We exchanged frantic glances filled with regret and longing before putting on our masks once more. "Got your favorite," Mark announced cheerfully as he approached us unaware of what had just transpired between us moments ago. The weight of secrets pressing heavily on my chest now more than ever before as we resumed our roles within this family facade built on fragile foundations threatening collapse any moment now. The evening wore on under flickering lights strung across trees while laughter echoed around us, each chuckle reminding me how out of place I felt among those who knew nothing about what lurked beneath surface smiles masking turmoil raging inside hearts torn between loyalty and desire threatening everything familiar yet comforting built over years spent together. Days passed since that night at the festival, the memory replaying endlessly in my mind like a haunting refrain refusing to fade away despite desperate attempts pushing thoughts aside focusing instead on mundane tasks filling life's routine void left by absence connection once cherished now tangled up confusion. feelings left unresolved. One afternoon, while cleaning out old boxes tucked away in storage room upstairs searching for forgotten treasures lost time, I stumbled upon letters written long ago, filled passion, youthful dreams, unfulfilled promises made during reckless days gone by. They were love letters exchanged between Mark and me back when everything felt uncomplicated, before life took its toll, twisting paths chosen leading here. My fingers traced over ink-smudged pages, revealing secrets buried deep within past, longing for clarity lost amidst chaos surrounding current situation. Just then footsteps echoed behind me. Turning quickly, found Jake standing there watching curiously, wide-eyed, filled innocence unaware, darkness creeping closer, threatening unravel everything held dear, risking future uncertain choices laid bare before him. "What's that?" he asked innocently, pointing toward letters scattered across floor. My heart raced, knowing full well these words carried weight beyond mere sentiments spoken aloud, revealing truths hidden behind closed doors, waiting patiently for someone brave enough to confront them head-on. "Just some old stuff," I replied hastily, shoving papers back into box, trying mask emotions swirling within, unable shake feeling exposed, raw vulnerability laid bare beneath scrutiny, gaze searching desperately, avoid consequences lurking nearby, waiting strike when least expected, leaving devastation behind. Jake stepped closer, peering intently into box, searching deeper than surface, revealing layers, truths waiting emerge unbidden, threatening unravel bonds carefully woven throughout years spent together, risking everything built thus far. Suddenly realization dawned upon him. Those letters held echoes past, haunting present, intertwining futures uncertain, leaving lingering questions unanswered, weighing heavily, hearts burdened endlessly, wondering whether paths chosen would lead happiness, fulfillment, instead despair, regret, haunting memories left behind forevermore. With each passing day tension grew palpable between us. The thrill mingled fear, creating emotional struggle difficult navigate without losing sight, true north guiding choices made along way leading toward inevitable confrontation, looming larger than life itself, demanding attention, forcing decisions confront fears buried deep beneath surface, waiting patiently emerge, reveal hidden truths forever altering family dynamic shaped over time. The night wrapped around us like a velvet cloak, heavy with unspoken words and shared secrets. Jake and I had crossed an invisible line, one that blurred the boundaries of our roles in each other's lives. We spent the night together, cocooned in a fragile bubble of intimacy that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The world outside faded into a distant hum, leaving only the sound of our breaths mingling in the quiet darkness. As dawn crept in, I found myself staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through the implications of what had just transpired. What would this mean for us? For Mark? The questions gnawed at me like persistent shadows lurking just beyond the light. I turned to look at Jake, who lay beside me, his face peaceful in sleep. In that moment, he seemed so innocent, yet I knew how complicated our situation had become. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to disturb him. The chill of the morning air brushed against my skin as I made my way to the kitchen. I needed coffee, something to ground me amidst this whirlwind of emotions. As I poured the dark liquid into a mug, I could hear the faint sounds of the city waking up outside. St. Louis was beginning another day, but my world felt irrevocably altered. The familiar sound of Mark's footsteps echoed down the hallway, pulling me from my thoughts. He entered the kitchen with his usual early morning energy, his eyes bright and alert as if he hadn't been working late into the night again. "Morning," he said cheerfully, pouring himself some coffee. "Morning," I replied, forcing a smile onto my face despite my racing heart. Mark began talking about his plans for the day, meetings and deadlines that seemed trivial compared to what loomed over me. He mentioned needing to pick up dinner for us later from our favorite restaurant downtown. It was supposed to be a small celebration for his recent promotion at work. "Sounds good," I managed to say while battling a wave of guilt that threatened to overwhelm me. As Mark continued speaking about work-related matters, my mind wandered back to Jake, the warmth of his body next to mine and the thrill of our secret rendezvous in the garden just days before. Our connection felt undeniable now, it was no longer just a fleeting attraction but something deeper that demanded acknowledgement. Just then, Mark paused mid-sentence as if sensing my distraction. "You okay? You seem a little out of it." "Yeah," I replied quickly, shaking off his concern with a wave of my hand. "Just tired." He nodded but didn't press further. Instead, he grabbed his briefcase and headed towards the door. "I'll be home around 7, he called back over his shoulder as he left. Once alone again, I leaned against the counter and took a deep breath. The silence enveloped me like a shroud. It was comforting yet suffocating all at once. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from Jake flashed on screen. "Can we talk?" My heart raced again at those simple words. I quickly typed back, "Yes." The exchange felt electric, a lifeline thrown amidst rising tides threatening to drown us both in this sea of secrecy and desire. An hour later found me lost in thought while tending to some chores around the house when Jake arrived unexpectedly at our front door. His expression mirrored mine, an equal mix of apprehension and longing as he stepped inside quietly. "Hey," he said softly, closing the door behind him as if sealing off any chance of being overheard. "Hey," I replied nervously. We stood there for a moment in silence before Jake took a step closer. There was an urgency in his gaze that sent shivers down my spine. "We need to talk about last night." "Yes," I breathed out slowly. Every word felt like it carried weight beyond its meaning. "I can't stop thinking about you," he confessed suddenly, looking straight into my eyes as if searching for answers there, a mirror reflecting back all our hidden truths. "I can't either," I admitted reluctantly. Admitting those feelings felt like admitting defeat against everything that held us apart. The family ties binding us both were thickening with every passing moment we spent together. Jake ran a hand through his hair anxiously before continuing hesitantly, "What are we doing? How can we keep pretending this isn't happening?" His question hung between us like an unbreakable thread connecting two hearts caught in an impossible situation, one that could unravel everything if pulled too tightly or severed too soon. "I don't know," I replied honestly. Uncertainty enveloped me like fog rolling over St. Louis streets on chilly mornings, thick enough to obscure clarity but not so dense as to hide everything completely from view. A sudden noise from outside interrupted our moment. A car horn blaring followed by laughter echoing down our street reminded us both where we stood within this tangled web spun from love and loyalty intertwined with betrayal lurking just beneath surface tension waiting for release. "I don't want this to end badly," Jake said, finally breaking through silence again. Determination surged through him as he stepped closer still until there was barely space left between us. A physical reminder how close we'd come despite all obstacles standing between us now looming larger than life itself demanding attention. "We have time," I whispered, trying desperately cling on to hope even knowing how fragile it truly felt beneath weighty complexities surrounding us both. But then came Mark's voice calling out from outside. A reminder reality awaited beyond these walls filled with dreams yet unfulfilled longings still simmering just beneath surface waiting patiently emerge reveal hidden truths forever altering family dynamics shaped over years gone by. My heart raced as panic set in realizing how precarious our situation had become. One wrong move could shatter everything. The sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the table cluttered with breakfast dishes. I stirred my coffee, my mind swirling with thoughts of Jake and the weight of our secret. Mark had already left for work, his usual hurried goodbye echoing in my ears. "Don't wait up," he had said, oblivious to the turmoil brewing within me. As I sat there, the remnants of our last encounter lingered like a ghost in the back of my mind. I could still feel Jake's touch, soft yet electrifying, his eyes filled with unspoken desires that mirrored my own. Each moment we shared felt like a fragile thread binding us together, but I knew it was a thread that could snap at any moment. I glanced around the kitchen, searching for something to distract me from my racing thoughts. The family photos on the wall caught my eye, a Mark and me smiling at our wedding, moments from vacations we had taken together. They felt like relics of a life that seemed increasingly distant. My heart sank as I recalled the note I had found in Jake's room just days earlier. "You are my only truth." The words haunted me, pulling me deeper into this emotional abyss. The tension between Mark and me was palpable. He had become more distant lately, consumed by work and promotions that required him to be away from home even more than before. Every time he mentioned his job, there was a flicker of guilt within me. How could I reconcile my growing feelings for Jake with my commitment to Mark? It felt impossible. Later that day, while tidying up our bedroom, I stumbled upon an old photograph tucked away in a drawer, a picture of Mark with another woman from years ago. Their smiles were bright and carefree, they looked happy together in a way that made my stomach churn. Jealousy and doubt gnawed at me as I stared at their faces. Had he ever felt this way about someone else? Was this why he had become so consumed by work? I shoved the photograph back into the drawer and closed it tightly as if sealing away those doubts along with it. But they lingered like shadows in my mind. That evening, Jake came over to help with some yard work after dinner, a pretense to spend time together without raising suspicion from Mark. As we worked side by side pulling weeds and trimming hedges in our garden sanctuary, tension crackled between us like static electricity. "Do you think we can keep doing this?" Jake asked suddenly, breaking the silence that hung heavily around us. "What do you mean?" My heart raced as I turned to face him. Us," he replied softly, his gaze intense yet vulnerable. "I don't want it to just be secret meetings and stolen moments." His words struck deep within me, igniting fears I had tried so hard to suppress. "Jake," my voice faltered as uncertainty washed over me. "I care about you," he continued earnestly. "More than just as family." I swallowed hard, his admission sent shivers down my spine, both thrilling and terrifying at once. "We can't. We need to think about what this means." "I don't want to hide anymore," he pressed gently but firmly. In that moment, everything shifted, the weight of our reality pressed down on us both like an anchor threatening to drag us under. A sudden rustle interrupted our conversation. A bird flitting through the branches above us reminded me of how exposed we were beneath the open sky. "We're playing with fire," I whispered urgently. Jake stepped closer. His proximity ignited something primal within me again. The warmth radiating off him was intoxicating yet dangerous all at once. "Maybe we need fire," he murmured softly before leaning closer again, the air thickening between us until it became almost unbearable. The tension snapped when Mark's voice called out from inside the house, a reminder that reality awaited just beyond our hidden sanctuary filled with blooming flowers and unspoken truths. "Everything okay out there?" Mark's voice echoed through the open door as he stepped outside briefly before retreating back inside without waiting for an answer. I pulled away instinctively as if burned by an unseen flame. Guilt washed over me anew as Jake's eyes reflected disappointment mixed with understanding, a silent acknowledgement of how precarious our situation had become. "Let's just finish up here," I said hastily, trying to regain composure while avoiding his gaze, my heart pounding wildly against my chest as we resumed working in silence until dusk fell around us like a curtain closing on another act of this twisted play we were caught in together. After Jake left later that evening, his lingering presence still hanging heavily in the air, I found myself wandering through our home aimlessly until I stumbled back into our bedroom once more, drawn inexplicably toward that old photograph hidden away in its dark confines. As I held it once again under dim light filtering through curtains drawn tightly shut against prying eyes outside, I couldn't shake off thoughts racing through my mind. What if Mark already suspected something? What if he found out about Jake? The thought alone sent chills racing down my spine. The consequences would be devastating beyond measure for everyone involved, not just for myself but also for both men who meant so much to me despite everything spiraling out of control around us all. Just then came a soft knock on the door. It was Mark standing there looking weary yet concerned after long hours spent working late into night again. He must have sensed something amiss even if unspoken words hung heavy between us both now. Jessica? His voice broke through silence, wrapping around us tightly like chains binding souls trapped within their own choices made long ago. Yes? My heart raced again. Uncertainty filled every crevice of thought, swirling chaotically within until suddenly everything felt unbearably tense. Can we talk? The question hung suspended in air, laden with implications neither one of us fully understood yet. The air was thick with tension as I stood there, caught between two worlds. Mark's gaze was sharp, his brow furrowed in a way that I had seen before, but never directed at Jake. The two of them stood facing each other in the garden, where so many of our family moments had taken place. The flowers, vibrant and alive, seemed to mock the stillness that had settled over us. Why are you here? Mark's voice cut through the silence like a knife. It was a question laced with accusation and confusion. I just wanted to talk to Jessica, Jake replied, his tone steady but edged with anxiety. I didn't mean to intrude. This is my home, Mark shot back, his fists clenched at his sides. You don't just show up whenever you feel like it. I took a step forward, desperate to defuse the situation before it escalated further. Mark, please. Let's not do this here. But my words felt weak against the storm brewing between them. I could sense Jake's discomfort. He shifted from foot to foot, avoiding Mark's glare. Why don't you tell her what you really want? Mark challenged Jake, his voice rising slightly. Mark, I began, but he cut me off. No. You need to hear this. He turned back to Jake. You think you can just play games with my family? With my wife? The word wife hung in the air like a heavy shroud. My heart sank as I realized how fragile our family unit had become. Each moment spent in secrecy with Jake felt like a betrayal of everything I had built with Mark. Jake opened his mouth as if to respond but hesitated. I could see the conflict etched on his face, an internal struggle that mirrored my own turmoil. I'm not playing games, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I care about Jessica. The admission hung there like an uninvited guest at our gathering. My heart raced at those words. They echoed everything I had been grappling with myself. But now they were out in the open, and there was no taking them back. Mark took a step closer to Jake, eyes narrowed in disbelief mixed with anger. Care about her? Is that what you call it? You're just a kid who doesn't know what he wants. Stop. I shouted suddenly, feeling a surge of protectiveness over both men despite the chaos swirling around us. This isn't helping anyone. Mark turned towards me, his expression softening for just a moment before hardening again when he looked back at Jake. You need to leave. No, I interjected firmly, my voice shaking slightly from the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. We need to talk about this together. Mark's gaze flickered between us as if trying to gauge how much damage had already been done and whether we could salvage anything from this confrontation. I won't let you come between us, he said finally, though uncertainty crept into his tone. Jake stepped forward slightly. It was almost instinctual, a protective gesture toward me that made my heart ache further for both of them. I'm not trying to come between you, he replied earnestly. But we can't pretend nothing is happening anymore. The truth of those words struck me hard as I felt the walls closing in around us all, the weight of secrets and lies pressing down like an oppressive blanket on our little oasis of life together. I found something, I said suddenly, feeling compelled to share what was weighing heavily on my mind, the hidden message from Jake that lingered in my thoughts like an unanswered question lingering in silence. What do you mean? Mark asked warily. A note from Jake, I admitted reluctantly, shame washed over me as their gazes fixed on me expectantly. What did it say? Mark demanded sharply. It was just confusing. My voice faltered under their scrutiny as I recalled how it made me feel, how it hinted at something deeper than mere attraction or infatuation, a connection that threatened everything familiar and comfortable in my life. Let's hear it. There was an intensity in Mark's tone that left no room for evasion or half-truths. I hesitated for a moment longer before finally admitting what lay beneath all the layers of guilt and desire. It said, "You are my only truth." A heavy silence enveloped us once more as those words settled into the space between us, a stark declaration that shattered any pretense we might have held on to until now. Mark's expression shifted into one of disbelief mixed with hurt. He looked at me as if searching for answers where none existed anymore. Jake's eyes widened slightly. Realization dawned upon him too, that these feelings we shared were now laid bare before someone who should have been our ally instead of an adversary. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he murmured quietly after what felt like an eternity stretched out before us all, a painful acknowledgement lingering unspoken among us, still hanging thickly in the air surrounding our broken family unit. "What do we do now?" My voice trembled slightly as uncertainty loomed large over our future together, one fraught with consequences neither one of us could fully comprehend, yet still looming ominously ahead nonetheless. "We figure it out." Mark finally spoke up again resolutely, even though doubt flickered behind every word spoken aloud, his commitment wavering under pressure yet somehow still intact amid chaos surrounding us all too much for comfort right now. But deep down inside me lingered fear, a gnawing dread that this confrontation would lead somewhere irrevocable, an ending rather than resolution, and questions remained unanswered while shadows grew longer across fading daylight around us. The air hung heavy with unspoken words, the tension palpable as Mark and I stood in our dimly lit living room. I could see the confusion etched on his face, a mixture of concern and suspicion swirling in his eyes. The text I had meant for Jake lay between us like a loaded gun, ready to go off at any moment. "Jessica, who is this?" Mark's voice was steady but strained as he held up my phone, the screen illuminating the dark space with Jake's name glaring back at us. My heart raced, and I felt a cold sweat trickle down my spine. "It's just a friend," I replied too quickly, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. "A friend? You don't text your friends like this." His brow furrowed deeper, and I could sense his frustration boiling beneath the surface. "What's going on?" I took a step back, feeling cornered by my own choices. The garden had been our sanctuary, a place where fleeting moments turned into something more profound. But now it felt like a prison of my making. "Mark, please, it's complicated." "Complicated?" He scoffed, running a hand through his hair in exasperation. "You think that makes any sense? You've been distant for weeks. What's really happening here?" I opened my mouth to respond but found no words to express the turmoil within me. Each moment spent with Jake had blurred the lines of my reality, creating an emotional labyrinth from which there seemed no escape. The weight of our secret pressed down on me like an anchor. Just then, a knock echoed through the house, a sound that felt both intrusive and oddly welcome amid our escalating confrontation. Mark glanced toward the door, his expression shifting to one of irritation mixed with curiosity. "Who could that be?" he muttered under his breath before striding over to answer it. My heart sank as I recognized the familiar figure standing on our doorstep, Mark's mother, Evelyn. She had always been opinionated and intrusive. Her arrival was rarely met with enthusiasm from either of us. "Surprise!" she exclaimed cheerfully as she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Her presence filled the room with an energy that contrasted sharply with our tension. "Mom," Mark greeted her reluctantly while I tried to compose myself in the background. "I thought I'd drop by and see how you two are doing," she said brightly, oblivious to the storm brewing in our midst. "You know how much I worry about you both." As she settled onto the couch, her gaze flickered between us, an instinctual awareness of something amiss lingering just beneath her cheerful exterior. "We're fine," Mark replied curtly before turning back to me, his expression now guarded. Evelyn's presence felt like a distraction from the chaos unfolding between us, yet it also brought forth memories, of family dinners filled with laughter that now felt distant and unattainable amidst my internal conflict. "Jessica dear," Evelyn began thoughtfully after a moment of silence stretched uncomfortably between us, "I've been meaning to ask if you've thought more about what we discussed last time." "What discussion?" My voice came out sharper than intended as I shot her a confused look. "The family reunion next month. It's important for everyone to come together." She smiled brightly but didn't notice how Mark stiffened beside me at her words. "I'll think about it," I managed to say while trying not to glance at Mark for reassurance or support. Both were slipping away from me faster than I could comprehend. Evelyn continued talking about plans for food and decorations as if nothing else mattered in that moment. Still, all I could focus on was how precarious my life had become since Jake entered it more than just as my stepson. When Evelyn finally left an hour later, her bright chatter lingering like perfume in the air, I turned toward Mark again only to find him staring out into space lost in thought. "What did you want me to say?" he finally asked quietly after several moments passed without another word exchanged between us. "I don't know," I admitted helplessly while running fingers through my hair nervously, a gesture he'd always found endearing yet now seemed out of place given our circumstances. Mark sighed heavily before meeting my gaze again. There was pain etched across his features that made me ache inside, remorse mingling with frustration creating an unbearable mix within both of us. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't," he said slowly as though weighing each word carefully before letting them fall into silence around us once more. In that instant, all clarity slipped away once again, the walls closing in around me suffocating any remaining hope for resolution or understanding between us both. The following days passed agonizingly slow. Every glance exchanged felt charged with unspoken truths while dinner conversations became mere formalities devoid of warmth or connection, a far cry from what they used to be just months prior when laughter echoed through these very walls instead of silence weighing heavily upon them now. Then came Saturday morning, the day of our neighborhood block party, a tradition we'd upheld since moving here years ago. Yet somehow this year felt different, like stepping into unfamiliar territory rather than celebrating community spirit together. As people gathered outside under tents adorned with colorful decorations reminiscent of summer joyfulness surrounding them all, I stood off to one side watching everyone mingle awkwardly, unable to shake off feelings swirling within me still tethered tightly around secrets kept hidden away. It wasn't long before Jake arrived, his youthful energy immediately drawing attention from those nearby. Laughter erupted around him, effortlessly connecting friends old and new alike. Yet despite being surrounded by people basking under sunlight shining brightly above, I felt utterly alone, trapped inside shadows cast by choices made long ago. "Hey," he greeted casually, approaching where I stood apart from others who danced merrily nearby while attempting not to let emotions bubble up again, threatening breach surface tension holding everything together still. "Hi," I replied softly, hoping he wouldn't notice how tightly wound up inside myself truly was under guise wanting nothing more than escape reality even briefly if possible. "You okay?" His concern shone through even amidst joviality surrounding us both, his eyes searching mine, looking for answers hidden deep beneath layers built over time, shielding vulnerability away from prying eyes always watching closely nearby. "I'm trying," was all I managed muster up, forcing smile onto lips, although truth weighed heavily behind facade, pretending everything remained alright despite evidence pointing otherwise, lurking just beyond reach, always haunting thoughts circulating endlessly within, head spinning wildly. "Out control now." Jake stepped closer, lowering voice almost conspiratorially, as if sharing secrets only meant for two ears alone, listening intently rather than anyone else present nearby, unaware turmoil brewing underneath, surface bubbling forth, threatening spillover any time soon unless contained properly first. "What's going on between you and him?" he asked pointedly, breaking through hesitation lingering longer than necessary, almost daring me confront reality head-on, finally laying bare truths hidden beneath layers woven tightly around heart, desperate yearning break free, somehow reclaim lost pieces scattered a long way throughout journey taken thus far together. My breath caught momentarily caught off guard by directness behind question posed so simply yet carrying weight far beyond mere words spoken aloud. It struck chord deep resonating within echoing loudly reminding me consequences faced every single day since beginning this tangled web spun intricately binding lives forever changed because decisions made impulsively without foresight considered beforehand, ultimately leading down paths unforeseen previously ventured upon before arriving here today. Standing face to face once again. I don't know. Words escaped barely above whisper trembling slightly revealing cracks forming facade held tightly together until now finally beginning crumbles slowly under pressure mounting steadily growing heavier pressing inward suffocating any remaining hope left untouched. Previously sheltered safely behind closed doors kept shut tight against world outside waiting patiently until ready confront honestly without fear judgment looming overhead threatening swallow whole leaving nothing behind. Except emptiness void left behind shattered dreams fading slowly into oblivion forgotten forevermore lost time slipping away unnoticed just like everything else once cherished dearly now reduced mere memories fading quietly away into darkness never seen again. In that moment shared vulnerability lingered heavily between us both. A fragile connection forged amidst chaos surrounding lives intertwined forevermore bound together irrevocably despite obstacles faced a long way ahead still looming large casting shadows across future uncertain awaiting next steps taken forward navigating. Treacherous waters ahead filled uncertainty yet yearning hope glimmering faintly somewhere deep down buried beneath layers built upon lies told repeatedly hiding truths hidden away waiting patiently until finally unearthed brought light shining brightly illuminating path forward ahead leading somewhere unknown yet promising something better perhaps worth risking everything once again. The air in the house grew thick with unspoken words, each one a potential fracture in the fragile structure of our lives. Mark's mother had arrived unexpectedly, her presence a stark reminder of the family dynamics I had tried to navigate. As she settled into our living room, sipping tea and reminiscing about the past, I could feel the weight of my choices pressing down on me. "Jessica, dear, you remember those summer picnics we used to have?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. "Mark always loved those." Her voice was warm, yet it sent a chill through me. Those picnics were filled with laughter and love, an image that now felt tainted by my hidden truths. "Of course," I replied, forcing a smile. "They were lovely times." But in my mind, I saw Jake's face, the way his laughter echoed in the garden during those same summers. The memories twisted together like vines, suffocating me with guilt. Later that evening, after Mark's mother had retired for the night, I found myself alone in the kitchen. The quiet was almost deafening as I stared at the empty mug in my hands. My thoughts drifted back to Jake, his smile, his touch, everything that felt so right yet so wrong. How could something so beautiful exist in such a tangled web of deceit? Mark entered quietly, his presence grounding yet unsettling. He leaned against the counter, watching me with a look that seemed to search for answers he couldn't quite articulate. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I answered too quickly. "Just tired." The lie hung between us like a heavy curtain. "Let's talk tomorrow," he suggested, concern etching lines on his forehead. "I feel like we haven't really connected lately." The words struck me with both relief and dread. Could this be an opportunity for clarity or just another layer of complication? "Sure," I replied mechanically, my heart racing at the thought of what tomorrow might bring. As I lay in bed that night, sleep eluded me. I replayed every moment spent with Jake, the stolen glances during family dinners and whispered secrets shared under the stars. Each memory felt like a thread pulling tighter around my heart. The next day unfolded slowly, time seemed to stretch as anticipation built within me. Mark had planned an afternoon out, a chance for us to reconnect amidst our chaotic lives. Yet as we drove through St. Louis streets lined with blooming trees and vibrant storefronts, my thoughts kept drifting back to Jake. "Do you remember that time we got lost trying to find that festival?" Mark asked suddenly, breaking through my reverie. I nodded absently but offered no further comment. Instead, images of Jake filled my mind, his laughter mixing with the sounds of festival music in a perfect harmony that now felt out of reach. We arrived at the park where families gathered under colorful tents and children played freely on lush green lawns. Mark seemed genuinely happy as he pointed out various attractions. The carousel spinning joyfully nearby drew him like a magnet. "Let's go," he exclaimed like a child eager for adventure. I followed him reluctantly, feeling more like an observer than a participant in this moment meant for bonding. As we approached the carousel, laughter echoed around us, a bittersweet reminder of what once was and what could never be again. "Look at them," Mark said softly, watching families enjoy their day together. "I want that for us again." His words pierced through me like arrows. They spoke of hope while simultaneously reminding me of my betrayal. "I do too," I managed to say without revealing how hollow those words felt inside me. Mark took my hand as we walked along the path leading deeper into the park, a gesture meant to reconnect but one that only amplified my inner turmoil. With every step closer to happiness he envisioned for us, I felt myself slipping further away from who I truly was becoming. Later that evening, after returning home from what should have been a joyful outing together but instead left an ache inside both of us unaddressed, I found myself standing alone in our garden once again under starlit skies where everything began unraveling between Jake and me months ago. The cool breeze rustled through leaves overhead while shadows danced across familiar ground, the very same spot where our secret moments unfolded away from prying eyes. A sanctuary turned prison by choices made without foresight or understanding consequences looming ahead, waiting just beyond sightlines drawn tight around hearts yearning desperately for connection amidst chaos surrounding them both. Suddenly footsteps broke through silence behind me. It was Jake stepping into view, illuminated by moonlight casting ethereal glow upon him, making him appear almost otherworldly. A vision pulling at every fiber within me, urging surrender once more despite everything already laid bare before us both. "What are you doing here?" My voice came out shaky despite efforts made trying maintain composure as tension crackled between us, thick enough cut air surrounding us both, instantly igniting flames, desire threatening consume everything else left untouched before now. "I needed to see you," he admitted quietly, stepping closer until distance between us vanished, leaving only breathless silence hanging suspended around us, charged with unspoken feelings swirling deep beneath surfaces worn thin by time passing, relentlessly ticking away, moments lost, forevermore slipping away unnoticed, just like everything else cherished dearly once upon time. "I can't keep doing this," I finally confessed, feeling weight bearing down heavily, crushing soul beneath burdens carried far too long, already threatening fracture entire foundation built upon lies told repeatedly, hiding truths buried deep, waiting patiently until finally unearthed, brought light shining brightly, illuminating path forward ahead, leading somewhere unknown yet promising something better, perhaps worth risking everything once again. Jake's gaze held mine steady, unwavering despite chaos surrounding us both. It was moments suspended between reality and dream, a fleeting glimpse into what could have been if choices made differently long ago, before entanglements ensnared hearts caught up midst tangled webs spun intricately around lives entwined, forevermore bound together irrevocably despite obstacles faced along way. Ahead still looming large, casting shadows across future uncertain, awaiting next steps taken forward, navigating treacherous waters ahead, filled uncertainty yet yearning, hope glimmering faintly somewhere deep down, buried beneath layers built upon lies told repeatedly, hiding truths hidden away, waiting patiently until finally unearthed, brought light shining brightly, illuminating path forward ahead, leading somewhere unknown yet promising something better, perhaps worth risking everything once again. Then suddenly voices broke through our moment. Mark's mother calling from inside, drawing closer, breaking spell woven tightly around hearts longing desperately connect amidst chaos surrounding them both. "What are we doing?" My voice trembled barely above whisper, filled with desperation, searching answers lingering just beyond reach, waiting patiently until finally unearthed, brought light shining brightly, illuminating path forward ahead, leading somewhere unknown yet promising something better, perhaps worth risking everything once again. And then came realization crashing down hard. this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about loyalty too, intertwined, deeply rooted within family bonds forged over years spent together, navigating life's complexities, struggling against tides threatening pull apart everything held dear. Before either one could respond fully, though, footsteps echoed loudly behind, drawing near, breaking fragile connection formed moments earlier, leaving nothing but uncertainty lingering heavily between them, both waiting patiently until finally unearthed brought light shining brightly, illuminating path forward ahead, leading somewhere unknown yet promising something better, perhaps worth risking everything once again. In that moment, shared vulnerability lingered heavily between us both. A fragile connection forged amidst chaos surrounding lives intertwined, forevermore bound together irrevocably despite obstacles faced, a long way ahead still looming large, casting shadows across future uncertain, awaiting next steps taken forward, navigating treacherous waters ahead, filled uncertainty yet yearning, hope glimmering faintly somewhere deep down, buried beneath layers built upon lies told repeatedly, hiding truths hidden away, waiting patiently until finally unearthed brought light shining brightly, illuminating path forward ahead, leading somewhere unknown yet promising something better, perhaps worth risking everything once again. But then came Mark's voice, breaking through darkness, echoing loudly across garden-filled memories past, where dreams lived among shadows cast long ago, reminding everyone involved choices made would forever alter family dynamics, irrevocably changing everything known before. Now challenging foundations built upon trust shattered completely, leaving nothing behind except emptiness, void left behind, shattered dreams fading slowly into oblivion, forgotten forevermore, lost time slipping away unnoticed. Just like everything else once cherished dearly, now reduced mere memories, fading quietly away into darkness, never seen again.